Hello, this is R.J. Deacon reading the Supreme Court of the United States opinion syllabus in Virginia Uranium Incorporated versus Warren, certiorari to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Argued November 5th, 2018. Decided June 17th, 2019. Petitioner Virginia Uranium Incorporated wants to mine raw uranium ore from a site near Coles Hill, Virginia. But Virginia law flatly prohibits uranium mining in the Commonwealth. The company filed suit, alleging that under the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, the Atomic Energy Act, AEA, preempts state uranium mining laws like Virginia's and ensconces the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC, as the lone regulator in the field. Both the District Court and the Fourth Circuit rejected the uranium company's argument, finding that while the AEA affords the NRC considerable authority over the nuclear fuel life cycle, it offers no hint that Congress sought to strip states of their traditional power to regulate mining on private lands within their border. The Supreme Court held, the judgment is affirmed, and Justice Gorsuch announced the opinion of the court. Justice Gorsuch, joined by Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh, concluded that the AEA does not preempt Virginia's law banning uranium mining. Virginia Uranium claims that the AEA is best read to reserve to the NRC alone the regulation of uranium mining based on nuclear safety concerns. But the AEA contains no provision expressly preempting state law. More pointedly, it grants the NRC extensive and sometimes exclusive authority to regulate nearly every aspect of the nuclear fuel life cycle except mining, expressly stating that the NRC's regulatory powers arise only after uranium's removal from its place of deposit in nature. That's 42 U.S.C. Section 2092. And statutory context confirms this reading. If the federal government wants to control uranium mining on private land, it must purchase or seize the land by eminent domain and make it federal land, Section 2096, indicating that state authority remains untouched. Later amendments to the AEA point to the same conclusion. Section 2021 allows the NRC to devolve certain of its regulatory powers to the states, but does nothing to extend the NRC's power to activities like mining, historically beyond its reach. And Section 2021K explains that states remain free to regulate the activities discussed in Section 2021 for purposes other than nuclear safety without the NRC's consent. Virginia Uranium contends instead that subsection K greatly expands the AEA's preemptive effect by demanding the displacement of any state law enacted for purposes of protection the public against radiation hazards. But subsection K merely clarifies that nothing in Section 2021 limits states' ability to regulate the activities subject to NRC control for other purposes. In addition, the company's reading would prohibit not only the states from regulating uranium mining to protect against radiation hazards, but the federal government as well, since the AEA affords it no authority to regulate uranium mining on private land. Virginia Uranium also submits that preemption may be found in this court's precedents, pointing to Pacific Gas and Electric versus State Energy Resources Conservation and Development Commission, which rejected a preemption challenge to a state law prohibiting the construction of new nuclear power plants after the court observed that it was enacted out of concern with economic development, not for the purposes of addressing radiation safety hazards. But Pacific Gas concerned a state moratorium on construction of new nuclear power plants, and nuclear plant construction has always been an area exclusively regulated by the federal government. It is one thing to inquire exactingly into state legislative purposes when state law comes close to trenching on core federal powers. It is another thing altogether to insist on the same exacting scrutiny for state laws far removed from core NRC powers. Later cases confirm the propriety of restraint in this area. See Silkwood versus Kerr-McGee, English versus General Electric. This court has generally treated field preemption as depending on what the state did, not why it did it. See Arizona versus United States. And because inquiries into legislative purpose both invite well-known conceptual and practical problems and pose risks to federalism and individual liberty, this court has long warned against undertaking potential misadventures into hidden state legislative intentions without a clear statutory mandate for the project. See Shady Grove Orthopedic Associates of Pennsylvania versus Allstate Insurance Corporation. Virginia Uranium alternatively suggests that the AEA displaces state law through so-called conflict preemption, in particular, that Virginia's mining law stands as an impermissible obstacle to the accomplishment and execution of the full purposes and objectives of Congress. See Hines versus Davidowitz. But any evidence of preemptive purposes or purpose, whether express or implied, must be sought in the statute's text and structure. CSX Transport versus Easterwood. Efforts to ascribe unenacted purposes and objectives to a federal statute face many of the same challenges as inquiries into the state's legislative intent. The only thing a court can be sure of is what can be found in the law itself. And the compromise that Congress actually struck in the AEA leaves mining regulation on private land to the states and grants the NRC regulatory authority only after uranium is removed from the earth. It is also unclear whether laws like Virginia's might have meaningful impact on the development of nuclear power in this country, given the other available foreign and domestic sources of uranium. Justice Ginsburg, joined by Justice Sotomayor and Justice Kagan, agreed with Justice Gorsuch that the Commonwealth's mining ban is not preempted, but concluded that his discussion of the perils of inquiring into legislative motive sweeps well beyond the confines of this case. Further, Virginia Uranium's obstacle preemption arguments fail under existing doctrine, so there is little reason to question whether that doctrine should be retained. The Commonwealth has forbidden conventional uranium mining on private land. The AEA leaves that activity unregulated. State law on the subject is therefore not preempted, whatever the reason for the law's enactment. Section 2021K lends no support for Virginia's uranium cause. That provision is most sensibly read to clarify that the door newly opened for state regulation of certain activities for nuclear safety purposes left in place pre-existing state authority to regulate activities for non-radiological purposes. House and Senate reports endorse this reading of Section 2021K. Virginia Uranium leans heavily on a statement in Pacific Gas and Electric Corporation versus State Energy Resources Conservation and Development Commission that the federal government has occupied the entire field of nuclear safety concerns. But neither in that case nor in later decisions in its wake of Silkwood versus Kerr-McGee Corporation and English versus General Electric did the court rest preemption on the purposes for which the state laws were enacted. Indeed, in all three, the court held that laws at issue were not preempted. Moreover, the state law involved in Pacific Gas addressed an activity, construction of nuclear power plants, closely regulated by the AEA. Inquiry into why the state law at issue in that case was enacted was therefore proper under 2021K. The Commonwealth's mining ban, in contrast, governs an activity not regulated by the AEA. The Solicitor General's argument that the Commonwealth's mining ban is preempted because it is a pretext for regulating the radiological safety hazards of mining and tailing storage is unpersuasive. To the degree that the AEA preempts state laws based on the purposes for which they were enacted, Section 2021K stakes out the boundaries of the preempted field. That's National Meat Association versus Harris. Virginia Uranium and the United States also fail to show that the mining ban creates an unacceptable obstacle to the accomplishment and execution of the full purposes and objectives of Congress. Wyeth versus Levine. Again, Justice Gorsuch announced the judgment of the court and delivered an opinion in which Justices Thomas and Kavanaugh joined. Justice Ginsburg filed an opinion concurring in the judgment in which Justice Sotomayor and Kagan joined. Chief Justice Roberts filed a dissenting opinion in which Justices Breyer and Alito joined. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to get a hold of the podcast, we can be reached at rhodesscholar80@gmail.com. That's ROADS and 80, or on Twitter at Court Syllabus.